Captain August, I'll buy you a goddamn door if you'll just let me, and I'll even install it myself. You just give me the damn job. And I sat back down and I literally I almost started crying. I said, I'm so sorry. I don't know what got into me. I'm so sorry. He goes, you know what? I like your spunk. When can you start?
Women in history, telling their history, leaves no mystery that we are the Wonder Women of Aviation.
Welcome back to the Wonder Women of Aviation podcast. Well, I don't know if you know, Theresa does a lot of the kind of, singing, but I would say kind of.
Julie, we've met at Oshkosh. I open and sing Warbirds in Review twice a day. So I have met you. I met you with your dog, and I met you with my friend Ricardo, the photographer.
Okay. And yeah, I remember Warbirds in Review a couple of years ago, and you came out and sang, and you wore those great these costumes. So yeah, good deal.
Superstar.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, you are. Well, thank you. Thank you for dealing with all this technology issues. And I think Zoom definitely works, because the other one would have probably been, you would have been like, okay, I'm done with you. So yeah, I don't know if I kind of gave you the lowdown on the podcast, but it's pretty much inviting girls or women that are not really familiar with aviation. I kind of started it as my place, finding my place in this industry. You know, my husband's an air show performer, and I kind of really didn't feel like I fit in. And I just started to figure out who's who and what's what. And he was just kind of giving me the lowdown of the air show industry. So I just decided, the best way for me to figure who people are is start my podcast and interviewing them. So that's kind of how the Wonder Woman of Aviation podcast started. And it just kind of started growing, and I don't know where it's going, but it's growing.
Well, good.
Natalia have been begging me for years to do it, and I was afraid, which is so weird because it was my singing and I have a radio background. I kept putting her off with a bunch of baloney excuses. And finally this year I said, all right, I'm not going to be afraid. Let's do it. Oddly enough, the technology was the thing that scared me the most. Which is weird. But so, and I love being part of something that promotes women in this male-dominated field. So,
Right.
Great opportunity for me too.
Good deal.
Yeah. And so my husband is the one that actually, Patrick told me about you, and I met you at ICAST in 2015, I think it was. And you gave us your book, which I still have here and I read, which is an amazing book. Nothing stood in her way. And oh, okay.
I right to this book. This is the original book that was published in hardback.
Oh, wow.
All the pictures are all in color. It's just
wow, that is amazing.
The publisher, I couldn't get the hardback copy. Anyway, that's why I bought it through Women in Aviation. They published my book back in 2004.
Wow. I really love the book. And I was, obviously, Patrick introduced me to you. And not only that, I was telling Theresa that this industry is a very tight-knit community. When I was kind of embarking on this journey and I relaunched the podcast, my first guest was Victoria Yeager, which she was an amazing guest. And then Victoria's like, oh, you have to talk to Peggy Tabry. And, I talked to Peggy, and then Peggy's like, you've got to talk to Julie Clark. I'm like, she's on the top of my list, but you are so hard to reach. I met you, but then I kind of lost your number. So here we are again. And rereading your book. So reconnecting with you is just phenomenal. And just after reading your story, I realized that there's so much more behind you and who you are. And just rereading it was just amazing. So here we are. I just wanted to kind of dive into your story. And for the listeners that don't know who Julie Clark is, I just like to describe who Julie is in an adjective. So if you were to describe Julie Clark in an adjective, who is Julie Clark? Just it's a quick little adjective.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
That question.
I'm putting you in a spot.
I pilot.
That's exactly right. And I just want to say, I have not read your book. This kind of came up last minute for me. Did not have a copy of the book. And so what we've decided is I'm going to come into this interview as someone who peripherally knows you, which would be like many of your fans who have not had access to the book. Everybody knows your name, but they don't really know your story. Now, I know a little more of it because I watched the videos that you shared with us, which we will share with others as well.
I see, yeah.
And so I'm not referring to the book because I've not had access to it yet.
which is a great perspective because we definitely want people to know, Julie Clark and who she is. So this is a great kind of relationship.
Yes.
So I'm going to go ahead and start it out with, young Julie. When you first fell in love with airplanes and aviation, can you just kind of tell us the beginnings of what made you fall in love with aviation?
Like I said in what you saw this morning, it was taking that first flight with my dad and knowing that he was an airline pilot, and then realizing what flying entailed. And I was really young, I was like 8, 9 years old when I first took my first full day flight with him on a full day trip, 1 day trip, and I just thought, man, this is what I want to do. And I have a twin sister, and she was such a girly girl, and I was such a tomboy, and we just grew up very differently that way. And I was just never one to play with dolls, never was into that type of girly girl stuff. I was just always into sports, athletics, gymnastics, and I just wanted to be an airline pilot, not just a pilot, but an airline pilot.
What was it about? Was it generationally that the airline industry was so new and it was so exciting? Was it the idea of flying a big airplane? Or was it all of that you were just like, I want to fly?
I think it was all of that, but I saw my dad was so respected and he was the chief pilot of the airline. And I just thought being an airline pilot would just be the neatest career. And I thought if my dad does it, I want to do what my dad did. And this is before his demise, but it was
Mhm.
something I really wanted to do.
Was he supportive of that when you said you were going to do it? Because
Oh,
I'm assuming he knows what the industry's like.
right,
And
but he never once pushed because this would be in the 50s. And I
right.
Right.
remember coming to my school and explaining what makes an airplane fly. And he brought models and he explained. I remember him
Mhm.
holding a pencil with a piece of paper and blowing on it, and the paper would fly up. And he was explaining about the pressure on the wings and the low pressure and the high pressure and what makes a wing fly. And so I remember sitting there and I was just so proud because this was my dad explaining in my 30 kids about what makes an airplane fly. And then I remember, you know how when you're little you have projects in the 3D, and I remember my project, I wanted to make an airport with a terminal building, a runway, and back then they were flying DC-6s, so we built these little DC-6 models, and that was what I did in school as my little project. I just grew up loving airplanes. I just strange when I think back.
Oh
Was that the dioramas? Because I remember
my
making
God.
those in
Word I
school.
was looking for that, yeah, when you have to make whatever it might be. So
Oh
my
my
Right.
project
gosh.
was an airport, and
I haven't thought of that in years.
That was
no,
so stressful.
I mean, I thought there's a specific name for that. In fact,
I think
there's a TV where they're showing a little girl showing her diorama to her mom, and she comes over with a little paper plate with spaghetti on it, and they're advertising the stronger paper plate, and the plate of spaghetti falls on her diorama, and I'm going, oh my god! I don't know if you've seen that.
Just
I think it's like for China Net or whatever
oh, yeah.
you just gave me PTSD for I hated that.
I would love to have seen your diorama, though, because when I was growing up, I wanted the Barbie airplane. Do you remember that you could get it was that plastic thing and it opened up
Oh,
but they only let you be the stewardess, which that's what you called them at the time. You didn't get to be the
that's what
pilot.
they call them. Yep, that's right. Yeah.
And it just made me think like growing up, did you have many other than your father? You didn't really have many role models to look up to in the aviation world. So that was actually one of my questions I'm going to jump into. Like, who were some of your role models that kind of led you to into aviation?
Nobody really led me into aviation, but once I got into aviation, and I became the airline pilot first and then the airshow pilot after that. But I certainly had some role models, with Art Scholl and Gads, who's one who he got me into Oshkosh. God, I can't think of his name. Dwayne Cole. Those were my role models. They really, really helped me into the airshow business. I started flying air shows in 1978, so I'm going way back.
Yeah.
Well,
I was going to do math on that, but I'm not going
I'm not. I'm
because
not
I
good
was
at mathing.
grown. I was getting grown at that time. Um, so so as I am learning a little bit more about your journey, one of the things that stood out for me that I could relate to you is that your life, everybody seems to look at someone like you and say, "Oh, she's a movie star. Life must be so easy for her." But I know as an entertainer, you go to these air shows and everybody thinks you're this big star, and then you go home and your dog has barfed on the floor and you're cleaning it up, and you're the glorious life of an air show performer. But it's even more than that. You really had some struggles, and how, you pushed through so many challenges. So from your perspective, what do you think kept you moving forward when for so many people, they would have said, I give up?
I think it's just the love of what I wanted to do, and I was just driven to do it. And this orphan and losing my dad and my mom within a year of each other, both sudden deaths. I was not going to let that define me. So people who would read my book, they said, "I never knew that story about your dad and your mom." I said, because I didn't talk about it. Just didn't talk about it, mainly because it would make me sad, and so I couldn't talk about it. So
Okay.
Yeah, just reading that, like, and then one story that really stuck with me after reading the book was like how hard you worked, and you had 4 to 5 jobs, and you work with TWA, and then I didn't even know the water skiing job, the marine world.
that's what paid for my flying lessons. I had no money whatsoever. There was a time when I really needed to get a haircut, and I had my German Shepherd, and I had to feed him, and I didn't have enough money to do both. So I went and got my dog food. I mean, yeah, I really struggled there. I just didn't know where my next money was going to come from. So yeah,
Yeah.
water skied at Marine World in the morning from
Mhm.
10 until 6 o'clock. Then at 7 o'clock, I'd go down to Charlie Brown's restaurant, and I was a cocktail waitress till 2 a.m. And then at 6:30 in the morning, I'm back at San Carlos Airport with all the cash I made the night before. How much flight time can I get today with this much money? It was always in cash.
Yeah, I think I wrote it here. Your eyes were burning from salt water. You took a
Oh,
quick shower. You slapped on some lipstick. You ran
and this
to your next.
hairpiece. Yeah. I ended up having my little following in the cocktail waitress, because we had to wear the little costumes with I'm probably the only one that had to have a pin because I didn't have the big boobs coming out. But plus I was really young, and but I needed the money. So I had my little corner of people said, "So did you fly yesterday?" And these were guys that just wanted to hear all about my flying lessons. So I had my little calling, and they'd say, "Oh no, we'll wait for Julie Clark's table," my little area of strictly cocktail. I did not do any meals. It was just a cocktail waitress at Charlie Brown's Steakhouse.
Oh, wow. Okay. So keeping up with your schedule, you could do it then. I think about that now at 58, and I'm like, no chance. And
Oh,
so,
58, that sounds so young. I was still doing all that at 58 because I'm 77. I'm
no,
really
yeah. Wow.
I wouldn't have thought
I'm
it.
pushing the big octogenarian,
Nice skin.
but
Well,
Wow.
it depends it's all how you project. My kids constantly say, Mom, you do not act your age. And that is the goal, is
yeah.
to
Yeah.
act the way you feel. But on your hardest days back then, do you remember hard days, or has it
Oh,
morphed into this happy memory? So if you remember the hard days, was it the flying that made you be like, just today, I'm going to get through this? How did you get through the hard stuff?
it, especially when I did shows up in Canada, I knew that I had to get back through customs on Sunday night. I always ferried my own airplane. I just did not need somebody calling me up and saying, "Jules, I'm in Greeley, Colorado, and I forgot to put the gear down. What do you want me to do?" Now you've just ruined my airplane. So I never had a ferry pilot in the 41 years I did air shows. And then when I was flying for the airlines, I always had to worry Sunday night. I never got to stay for any of the survivors parties. I always had to go because I had to get the airplane either through customs or down in the border. I finally bought a home in Minnesota that I had for 30 years on a grass runway. That put me more centrally located. So in the summer, I lived full time in my Minnesota house. But
Ah,
I've done air shows in every state in the United States except Hawaii, and I've been asked to go there. And then the last minute they said, "No, we did need to dismantle your airplane to get it over there." And there's no way I can do that with that airplane. But anyway, and I've been to Bermuda, the Caribbean, 2 shows in Mexico, twice up in Alaska, and all the lower provinces of Canada because Chrysler Canada was my main sponsor up there. So I did about a third of my shows in Canada. I always did a lot of worrying about trying to get the airplane back to either back to Minnesota or take it to the next air show site, get on a Northwest flight and get back to Minneapolis so I could fly my trips. It was
so
always
you were air showing and still commercial pilot.
for
Yeah.
sure. For about 20 years, I did the two together.
You get used to that life, huh?
Very,
Yeah.
very complicated life. Yeah.
I want to talk about you getting into the professional pilot, the commercial pilot thing, because that's really, when you think about where women, how far women have come in the world and specifically aviation, that, to me, that has to be one of your bravest things. I know a lot of people are like, oh, flying, doing the, flip flops, doing all that stuff. That's, all of the air show flying things seem to be the most difficult, but I think the most discouraging had to have been trying to get into commercial airlines.
Yeah, it just nobody wanted to hire the first woman, and in the early to mid '70s was when we were breaking through that ceiling, that glass ceiling, and the things they said to you on the phone, and you didn't have a name. I was just called the girl. She wants to update her resume. What do I tell her?
Ugh.
It was really a rough deal, and like you saw in that video, it took about 9 months for Golden West to finally, after I'd cut my hair, done everything they'd asked me to do, except for this issue on the no door on the men's room. And, they tell the story pretty gentle. Let me tell you how it really unfolded. Passed the check ride, went through all my ground school and had done my final flight, cut my hair from real long to chin length to up and around my ears because they said, no, it's not quite short enough. So I did. And I was married to a Navy pilot who just, he kind of supported me, but didn't like seeing what I had to do to get this job. So now I'm on my last day and I just passed the check ride and Captain, I still remember his name. His name was Abel August. He was the chief pilot of Golden West Airlines. He said, well, we still have one more problem, Julie, and I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to get past it. So I looked him and we're sitting across from his desk and he told me I'd flown a good airplane on this Twin Otter and it was the first turboprop airplane I'd ever flown. And um, so he said, well, when you walk into the men's, go into the ramp office to meet your crew and get the weather and get ready to go out to where the airplanes are parked at LAX. He said, you walk in and to the left is our men's room and there's no door on the men's room. I'm just not sure how we're going to handle that. And I got it in his face. And this is exactly what I said. Of course, I don't tell this when I talk, this is between, can I, can I use profanity like I did?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Captain August, I'll buy you a goddamn door if you'll just let me, and I'll even install it myself if you just give me the damn job. And I sat back down and I almost started crying. I said, I'm so sorry. I don't know what got into me. I'm so sorry. He goes, you know what? I like your spunk. When can you start? That
Oh,
ground
Love it.
school on Monday. Yeah. So they don't tell how I really just, I lost it because I had done all these squares and all the friends I had gone through ground school up in Toronto through the DHC 6 ground school because it's a Canadian built airplane. They were all in school already flying the line, had their, and here I was still trying to get through an interview and get the job. And then when I
Wow.
did get the job, I wore a men's uniform. They didn't want me doing any interviews. They just didn't want it to be known that there was a woman pilot at Golden West Airlines, their first and only woman. So I honored that. When they asked for interviews, I said, go see the chief pilot. I can't answer that. And then I got
Wow.
stared at all the time going through LAX airport. And then the
Really?
controllers, they started calling our nickname was Goldie for Golden West. And they go, hey, Goldie, Julie, how you doing today? And I thought, oh my God, they all knew who my name was. And they just were no women on these frequencies. So when I came on frequency, it was really a big deal.
Wow. How did you handle that? I mean, you just kind of
I,
just kept your
I
head
just
high.
said, I'm doing great. How are you? We're at 7,000 feet checking in, just made my call and thought, don't recognize me. Don't bring this up. I was trying to keep it so low key. And it was hard to do that. There was no other freaks out there like me. I felt like a freak walking through the airport. I always had my head down and I didn't want people to stop me. And I usually was with the captain I'm flying with.
other women for other airlines at LAX at that time?
They were starting to get in there, but I never saw them. If I did it, Valerie Walker had gotten hired with Western, and then within a year later, I got hired with Hughes Air West. So I saw her once in a while at LAX, and we became friends, and we're still friends to this day. One of us were charter members of ISA. We've already lost four of us, in death.
That's it. Whenever I hear stories like this, it just makes me think how far we have come in so short of amount of time. Like even technology through the millennium has been like this, and then in the last 100 years, it's
Mhm.
like this meteoric rise, and it's the same for women in aviation. But I really think that it's a testament to your tenacity,
Right.
your love of aviation, and your you're just, I don't know, spunk.
When can you start? And
Yeah,
I'm thinking right now. And so
I'm
I
ready.
hired me that day after I got in his face. And I actually said, I'll buy a goddamn door and I'll even install it myself if you give me the damn job. And I sat down and go, oh my God, I just blew that interview. And that's what
Wow.
job because I had it up to here. Just
And that wasn't the only incident. There was one of many. I mean, in the book, you described so many situations. Like there was a cigar incident. I'm like, oh,
oh, yeah.
oh my God.
Mask on and no autopilot. And he's watching me struggle. And oh, yeah.
I've got to get
I
Teresa.
have to admit that
Yeah.
the bigger airlines treated me not as well at first, even though it was an airline that my dad had once been chief pilot. But I was Julie Clark Ames, and I did not let people know my last name was Clark. I was Julie Ames, even though my name was Clark Ames. It was hyphenated because I didn't want people to even know that I was Captain Clark's daughter, and so many people didn't know that till I'd already been flying for a while. And I got
Really?
prepared for Western and Hughes Air West the same day. We got telegrams.
Mhm.
And so I chose Hughes Air West because the start date was first, and it had to happen to be an airline that my dad had once been a part of before the merger of Air West and Hughes Air West. And then it became Republic Airlines through Southern Northwest and Southern Central. Let's see what Southern North Central and Hughes merged became Republic Airlines, and Northwest bought us. And for the last 20 years of my 30-year career, I flew for Northwest, which is now Delta. So my
Oh my God.
yeah, so I've seen a
Julie,
lot of jobs.
what did they do for your uniform? Did they give you grief about a uniform back then?
But they just took men's coats and made them that, we just went into heart. I'll never forget because they used to call it Heartless. Hartalius, I think they're still in business, make all the male, the airline uniforms in LA, in fact. And
Wow.
they just took a male jacket and made it fit me. And then I had to wear the necktie with my men's shirt and then the men's hat, which was ridiculous. So they finally came up with women's hats that are smaller.
I was
Yeah.
scary.
You
I like
definitely have to be strategic in so many ways. I just can't even imagine that this is a world that existed.
that's not the only thing.
You've
I
got to
mean,
read the book.
is the book still available?
It's available on Amazon, the paperback. But this book, my twin sister went out and bought a few used ones, and she wanted me to sign one for one of her neighbors. So I opened it up, and it said to Robert, and it was signed like 2005, but it used. So I ripped out that page, but it was unfortunately it was the title, or the what do you call it, title page. But anyway, so the hardback is out of print.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
I'll find it on Amazon.
Oh
yeah.
yeah, it's definitely on Amazon.
You're gonna love it and just get so angry at how things were back in the day and living in that environment. And Julie, you overcame so much and just being composed as well. Like I would have just lost it.
Oh, I did a couple times. I didn't put that story in the book. I remember Ann Cooper said, "I think we better leave that story out." I said, "Yeah, I think so."
I
And
was
when I flew with this F-15 pilot. Yeah, and I'm a new captain on the MD-80, and he just treated me so shitty and it was over Christmas. So we got back Christmas Eve night in Detroit. So we were both TDY to Detroit. He was based in Memphis. I was based in Minneapolis, and he just gave me grief the whole time. But when he goes, "Oh, woman pilot, I don't even know how to treat you." And I said, "Well, you can start by opening the cockpit door if you want." Just trying to come up with something. And so now we're in the cockpit and we're doing our job. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is gonna be a long 3 days. I'm just not gonna look forward to this trip. And so he says V1 rotate, and I say positive. He says positive rate, and I said gear up.
Mhm.
Well, he doesn't reach over and get the gear. And I said gear up. And he didn't reach over and get the gear. So I reached way over on the DC-9 as a big old, and I raised my own gear, and I thought this could be a really shitty trip. So the guy was just an asshole, but luckily that whole gear up incident is what saved me from, because here's what happened at the end of the trip. We're getting off the airplane, and this little couple had gotten on later, and they said, "Oh, honey, it's a woman pilot." And I thought, oh boy, and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" So now they're coming up as we landed back in Detroit, and it's late at night, and it's Christmas Eve. And so she said, "Oh, that was such a beautiful landing, dear." And I so kiddingly, I just said, "Oh, well, it had a woman's touch just for you." She was a sweet little lady. So she gets off, and she and her husband are trundling up the jetway. And here's this jackass co-pilot he said something about, because she loved it was a woman pilot. And he said, "She's just part of affirmative action." I fucking went through the ceiling. I came way before affirmative action. So I grabbed him by the throat and I threw him up against.
Oh, Julie.
And I said, you know what? I've been pretty shit for 3 days. And I came way before affirmative action. And I said, I have more time inverted than you do right side up. I've been flying longer than you've been breathing. By the way, Merry fucking Christmas. And then I shut down going, oh dear. And so I thought, well, now he's going to go the chief pilot because I assaulted him. I took him up against the jetway, which is metal. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking back and I just gave him shit because he had. So anyway, I ended up getting back to Minneapolis, and I went to our check-in ladies. I said, I need Sarge Martin's home phone number. I need to call him. And it was a holiday, you know, Christmas. They said, Julie, I said, I need his number. Something happened. And well, is everything okay? I said, I have to talk to him. So I told him the whole story because I thought this kid was going to turn me in and I was going to lose my job because I assaulted him physically and I gave him some real crap. And so I told Sarge Martin the whole story after I got a hold of him up in his cabin up north of Minnesota and his, you know, Christmas. And he goes, what's up, Clark? And so I told him the story and he said, nothing is ever going to come of that because where he went wrong is he did not raise the landing gear for you. I don't care what you did to him after that because I thought, oh my God, I'm in a lot of shit, but he treated me so horribly. And this is, you know, midway through my career and I'm a captain and
Right. My gosh.
asshole. And
What would that have been? 70s, 80s, 90s?
what was that?
Was it in the 80s?
No, this would be in the 90s. I would say early 90s because I upgraded to captain. Yeah, I'd say very early 90s when I went to the MD-80 because you kind of remember that you go to as an upgrade on the captain. So I'd say
I can't believe he was doing that to you in the 90s. You did.
she's just a part of a bit of action. Oh my God,
Oh, hell no.
Mm-mm.
I'm so proud of you.
yeah.
Mm-mm.
Go, Julie.
Eat it. So I remember telling Anne the story, and she said, I think we'll leave that out of the book. I said, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
That's
Here.
stuff.
Believe you could tell the story in here.
Yeah. But
Look at the 2020, 25. We're telling these stories.
Yeah.
Oh my
Where
gosh.
he went wrong was when he would not raise the gear for me because that's a
Right.
safety issue, you know, and it wasn't doing his job. So anyway, and Sarge said he never had a call about it. He wanted to know the guy's name, but we just let it die and go
Yeah.
away. Why make a
Right.
issue?
Right.
Sometimes that's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the stigma back then was not saying anything.
Yeah, he said, what did you say to him again? I said, I've been flying longer than you've been breathing. I got more time inverted than you do right side up. By the way, Merry Christmas.
Need a
Sarge,
shirt.
funny is what I said, you know, that's funny. But anyway.
That's a great story. See, now we
but
can say we
I
have an
lost my job.
exclusive.
If you assault
Love it.
somebody, I'd be on the street in a heartbeat. Yeah.
Yeah, it was back in the day. So, all right. So that's your commercial thing. Now,
I was going to say,
Let's
speaking
talk
of inverted,
let's talk about the Powerpuff Derby.
Oh, yeah. I flew in the very last, actually, a couple of Proud Puff Derbies, and I really got into air racing. I flew the Palms to Pines, the Fresno 400, the Hayward Air Derby. I did a lot of air racing, and I kind of enjoyed it. But this is really before I became an airline pilot. This is not just.
Oh,
What
this
is that
of
far
course.
back?
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was getting hired for Golden West, but I hadn't flown yet.
yeah. So did I see you at Roswell this year? Did you go to Roswell?
Oh, well, I was actually that was the weekend I was being inducted into the.
Because that's the first time I've ever been to air races for Roswell. And I didn't see anybody because I was working in the jet class tent doing some hospitality and stuff. So I didn't get to see the races other than where I was, but I couldn't remember if I had heard that you were there or not.
No, I wasn't there, but I certainly flew Reno every year in the 90s, every single year because I
Oh,
was
wow.
flying for Reno Jeep was my sponsor. And yeah, so I was there every year.
I never knew that about you, Julie. That's crazy.
Wow.
Things you learn about.
Things you learn. Well, Natalia, I think you wanted to talk about your connection to Julie and her airplane.
Right. Well, one thing I learned, and I always get geeked out about, the pits, right? So I
Oh,
just,
yeah.
yeah, of course, because my heart is with the Pitts biplane. And whenever I read or see that someone started in a Pitts biplane, I always get excited. And then I wonder, well, why did they leave the Pitts biplane? So that was one of my questions. Like, obviously, the T-34 is Julie, and that's signature of who you are. But why did you leave the pit?
Had just gotten on with the airlines at Hughes Air West, and I was based in Phoenix, and I flew with Smokey Stover, this guy who had a Pitts S1. And so he had me get checked out, and I got very involved in competition flying. I really enjoyed that. Did that in 76, 77. And but it wasn't my airplane, it was his airplane. But for every hour that he let me fly and do instruction and check out other pilots, in the pits, I got all the flight time I wanted. I mean, it was like my airplane. I flew 1-4 Charlie Brown. I remember the end number really well.
Oh my gosh.
And so I loved that little airplane. Then things just evolved where I remember my husband, he did not like me flying the pits. But anyway, I forget how well, I was on a 3-ship team with the T-34s, and we were called the Falcons, and I flew for the CAF. So I was trying to do both, plus fly for the airlines, and it was just too much. So I gave up the competition flying and started. And then I was actually flying the B-17 for 2 years, a sentimental journey. And even the CAF said, you either do your air show flying or fly with us. You can't do both. So I gave up the B-17, I gave up the pits, and I ended up flying on the 3-ship team. But then in 1980, I went solo because the guys, they're both very, very wealthy guys, but they didn't want to practice. They didn't want to, I did all the bookings. I did all the stuff of showing up early for all the publicity crap. And so I went solo in 1980, and that's when I decided to build a theme and
Yeah.
build something to this, because a T-34 is not as exciting as a Pitts for sure.
Right.
Unfortunately, there was a lot of Pitts acts back then. So, and I never dreamed of thinking of being an airshow pilot. That wasn't even something on my horizon to be an airshow pilot. That wasn't really something I really had any desire to really get into, but it just I kind of fell into it.
I think that's what everyone says. I kind of fell into air shows, and I'm kind of curious. How did you fall into air shows? Because you describe like the freedom of
Yeah.
aerobatics in your book.
No, but I mean, I fell into the air show scene because I was with the Falcons. And so I kind of got hooked on doing that. But then I wanted to go solo and build my own show, do my own thing. And so that's how, but I shouldn't use the word fall into air shows, but air show flying was not something I had as a desire to do because my airline career took up a lot of my time. But,
Mm.
and I bought the T-34 on a whim. I was flying charter. I wasn't even flying for Golden West yet. And I saw next year will be 50 years that I've owned that airplane. And there's not 50. I've never, it's outlived 2 husbands. I tell people it's my best friend because it can't talk and it can't read. So,
Invest in a plane, ladies.
yeah, so I saw that they were taking 2 A-45s, which is the civilian version of a T-34, and they were putting them on a sealed auction bid up in Alaska. And so you could bid on a sealed bid, but you needed $1,000 to make the bid. So I had to borrow the money from a girl that was a school teacher friend of mine that I had taught to fly. And so she lent me the money. And then it took almost a year later that I found out I had won the bid. And now the airplane's up in Alaska. I'd never seen it, didn't know what it looked like, but made a lot of phone calls about it. And so that's how that whole thing started.
And you
Wow.
restored it yourself. Like I was reading like,
I've never done a ground up restoration. I did all the cosmetics of it. That was the final nail in the coffin of my marriage to my Navy pilot friend, but we're still friends to this day. But anyway,
I raised 2 boys, and every relationship I've had, sometimes I think my children are better behaved.
that's how I feel about my kid, Larry. I just was with him yesterday at a little conference he went to, a display thing, and I'm so proud of him, and he's an Atlas pilot, and I taught him to fly. And you're right, the kids, it's the partners that just
question I had. I'm starting to learn more about the T-34. I work with someone who does formation with the T-34, and I feel like we're very limited with pilots, and I feel like that generation is just slowly dying. We're losing that generation, and how do we get the young or future generation passionate about not only just warbirds, T-34s in general, like it's a very niched aircraft.
I feel like you do, though. I don't see the passion in these young kids. I see that they're given an opportunity, which is really great. I'm all for that. But they run them through the pipeline, get them hired on the airlines with no experience. And they're not true pilots that are stick and rudder people. They're just not. They get up and they manage a machine through the sky that's all electric, like I retired on the Airbus. So I get it. But flying, I Oh, I should say the best airline pilots I flew with were ones that flew on the side, on their days
Yeah.
off.
Well, Natalia and I were just at the air show in Monroe, North Carolina, which is where I'm from. And there's actually a young guy
Yeah.
who we'll get back to his question at the end, but he graduated from a local high school at 19 and he is flying commercially, but he also flies the T-34 Mentor and he flew it in the air show. And his dad runs the Warriors and Warbirds, which is a veterans and they have reenactors and stuff like that. And Mike, his name's Mike Beckerman, and he is one of the few really young guys that
Yeah.
has gotten his commercial license and is converting, on the weekends to flying the T-34. But you don't see it very often
Oh,
at all.
do you remember the little gentleman, Ben Templeton? He flew his little J3 Cub throughout the United States and hit every state in the United States. So I hosted him for one day at my house, and I have an apartment in my hangar, and he stayed overnight. I took him to dinner, and he was really recognized back in 2022 or three at Oshkosh with his Cub there, when all the people had signed the Cub that he'd worked with on his trip. But what I love about him is he's a real stick and rudder guy. He belongs. It's called Triple Tree Aerodrome.
Yep, I know where that is.
Right, well, that's where he's out of, and one of the guys that helped form that little grass, it's the longest grass runway in the United States. It's like 4,000 feet of grass. And he keeps asking me to come out for their big fly-in, but it's a long ways to fly to South Carolina. I think it's South Carolina.
It is.
But
It's
anyway,
South Carolina.
he's going to end up being an airline pilot. But I remember when he did this trip up, hitting every state in the United States in his little J3 Cub. That's quite a deal in a little Cub. And I was happy to host him. And so he really recognized, they wrote a book, and he recognized each person that hosted him. But he's going to be, what my point is, he's going to become an airline pilot with a lot of stick and rudder flying. And he's already flying a jet now. And he'll make it sky high because he's a stick and rudder kid.
I was just reading his biography. I looked it up and I was seeing it was Triple Tree. It's actually worth it if you have the chance to come out and just borrow somebody
I'd like
else's
to
plane.
sometime. It's just a long ways in these T-34s, all the way across the United States. So, who knows? But like this year at Oshkosh, they want my airplane out there for 2 days for the 250th birthday that we'll be celebrating of our country, and they like the patriotic paint job. So they're going to put it in the square for 2 days. But I'm still waiting back because I want to make sure they're going to, on the nights that I'm come in, can I get it in the hangar? That's polished aluminum. It's just a lot of work.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for them to tell me. But, but they don't want to offer paying for your gas or give you a hotel room and a rent a car. So that'll be something I'll deal with out at Warbirds, and I'll take care of that because I have a lot of friends out there that have RVs. But it is still a real hassle to get out there from California.
That is a long, long flight.
Well, Mike goes with me in his T-34 now. Just place, he goes, I don't know how you did this for 40 years flying this airplane, because big engine, no gas. So you're hopping every 2.5 hours. You got to refuel. So
Yeah. I mean, I don't think people like me who don't fly very often, I get airsick.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. So unless I get my pilot's license, I usually got my face in a bag.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear.
It's a joke. I flew
Just gotta
one
do it.
time in with Ricardo, the photographer, and we get off the plane and he takes a picture of me and I'm like, is that a picture of me holding my barf bag? And he's like, yes. I'm like, I'm done. I said,
Oh.
Photoshop it out.
Yeah, that's had to give rides, and I always say, now this is your boarding pass. So I called it their boarding pass, but I learned that with the Snowbirds. I got to fly 2 full shows with the Snowbirds, and they called it that boarding pass. I said, I will not need that, which of course I never would, but I call it the boarding. Explained to him, I said, now it's not the little blue bag. You got to pull the bag out, and that's the bag. So anyway.
Well,
Fantastic.
it just happens. But, you don't realize, my point was, you don't realize how much goes into, people are like, how comes they didn't bring this plane to Oshkosh? I don't think they realize everything that goes into that. And it's just
the knack.
And-
I'm sure your husband, Natalia, is flying Oshkosh. I mean, does he?
He hasn't flown it yet. No.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a heck. I mean, I flew it for 35 years.
Yeah.
It's a real rough deal, and you better be on time. And back when I started flying at Oshkosh, they only gave each performer 6 minutes. So you had to, I fly to music, and the music, all that was more than 6 minutes. So finally they let me have 10, and now you just fly your full show. But
Right. Yeah.
a
It
lot of
sounds like it's stressful. Yeah.
the days that you fly, and then on the days I didn't fly, I flew my T-28. So I take the T-34 back to Minnesota, pick up the T-28, and fly with the Warbirds and the Warbird shows with the T-28. So I
Wow.
did all that. I mean, it's
That,
just like
that's
it's
a lot.
a
It
ton.
is. Being a performer, and I want to talk a little bit about being an airshow performer. Like, what was your process? I know what being a performer is, but for those that are listening, for Julie, what did that look like?
It's just a lot of work getting the airplane to the event. And in my case, I used fireworks, so I have an ATF license, and getting the fireworks through the gate. My ground crew, they drove my big rig, but we got so tired of them BSing about the fireworks in the back of the rig, they wouldn't let them in. So that was always a pain in the neck. And then, getting set up with the announcers, and getting the music done right, and mounting the multicolored smoke, and just getting the airplane ready from the ferry flight to now an aerobatic flight. It was a lot of work and we always took out the back seat because of the weight. And it was just a lot of work. And I always, because that's a standard category airplane, they finally started saying that no experimental airplanes could give press rides. So I'd arrive on scene, and they'd say, "Okay, Julie, we have 5 people we want you to give rides." And I said, "I am not giving 5 rides, because I don't need the airplane breaking on one of my press rides, and now I can't fly in the air show." So I put it in my contract, 2 rides, only 2 rides.
Oh, you have to. Contracts are very important.
Yeah, and after I retired from the airlines, I could go early and stay beyond the Sunday and get back. It's flying air shows it's a ton of work on the performer. It's a lot of work. And then, I had a big rig set up because I had great sponsors. So Chevron and Mopar, I flew for Mopar for just under 20 years, 20 years, 20 seasons, 19 years. And I did a lot of neat things that they had me do for them, like landing on drag strips and flying, flying shows at the drag strips other than air shows. But they have a requirement. And so we would set up a big display, and I'd have to have ground crew that would take a day to set up the display. And I signed autographs till that last kid went home. A lot of performers I've seen, they go back and
Yeah.
they rent a car, have the air on, and listen to music.
Yep.
At the end of their day, that was not my way
No.
away.
Yeah.
I see that all the time to this day, and we don't do that. We to the very last person. We are out there in the elements.
Yep, and it's a rough deal.
It
And
is.
tired at the end of the weekend.
But do you miss it?
I miss the fans and I miss the flying, but I do not miss going to show, and I do not miss going to ICAS every year. That was really a big, that was just a lot of work every
Yeah.
December, and I did that for 36 straight years, never missed a year. And then I was on the board of directors of ICAS for about 3 years, I guess. I mean, it was just a lot of work. People
Yeah.
say, "Oh, you won the Sword of Excellence and the Bill Barber Award and the Art Scholl Award," but I worked for those
Yeah.
awards. It didn't come easy.
Yeah.
And you've paid your dues in that regard.
I do. I will acknowledge that.
Yeah. And so here's a question. So we've talked about your life in general. And when you look back at your, all of the things that you went through and all of the barriers that you've broken, can you think back to a moment when you said to yourself, "I belong here"? Was there ever a point where you felt like you didn't belong and then suddenly you did belong? Or did you always feel like you belonged there?
I've always felt like I belonged because I contributed, and I was just as good as everybody else there as far as quality of abilities. So I never felt like I didn't belong. But there's sometimes when you realize, there's just all guys around you, but I usually didn't let it bother me. And I never even brought that up. A lot of women, they have to kind of acknowledge, "Why is the only girl there?" I'm thinking, so what? Just do your job. It doesn't matter what your gender is.
And that's a good message to get
I
out to
like
the
that.
younger women who are watching this is just keep your confidence, whatever it is that you're facing, whether it's in aviation or otherwise, you have a place
And
and
don't
you
Yeah.
bring
own
it
that.
up. To me, it's the women that have to make themselves known. Like, I'm going to tell you something, and I don't know if you guys will like this or not, but you'll see these young girls, and they're usually really pretty young girls, and they get their pilot's license, and then they have to start doing their little podcasts or their YouTube stuff. And then they're the ones that we've lost 2 really cute little gals
Yeah.
weren't qualified, and they wanted to parlay was their good looks, and look at I'm flying this little
Yes.
Cherokee airplane, and I'm really, you know,
Yep.
and they're
Yep.
making a bad name for us because it's not the sexuality the
Mhm.
that makes you the pilot. It's the love of flying and your abilities.
You're
So many
focusing on the wrong things.
things going, oh my God.
Social media has really created a monster as far as I'm concerned. So when we were at the Monroe Air Show, I was the narrator for the main show. And one of the things I really tried to do,
Uh-huh. That's
the
cool.
hardest, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but this is not about me. The point was
Just
that when every time we had an opportunity, so Sam the wing walker was there. I really try to promote this message of you can do these things. But I do think that you're right. There is a component of if you're going to do them, then do them well and don't worry about your followers and social
Right.
media stuff.
can't stand what I've seen. And I'm going to bring up another thing about this little gal that got checked out on her T6 and her boyfriend, and she's from a very wealthy family in Texas. And then she gets killed in the T6 with taking, I think, her cousin or somebody in the back seat. She got herself into an inverted flat spin and died right there at Lake Winnebago.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
It was just a very sad thing, and she was not qualified yet to be out there doing aerobatics. She didn't even know keep your nose
Yeah.
low in the turn and quit pulling back on the stick and get yourself in a bad situation, and she couldn't get out of it. And she killed her and a 20-year-old
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
cousin. But anyway, they really went on and on about this. And to me, they were promoting her too soon, too young, and inexperienced. And then they put you in a T6. What the hell are they doing?
Right.
And that's what
Yeah.
killed.
Yeah.
That's sad. Yeah, that's why I asked you, like, one of the questions was like, how do we get people to, you know, get into these warbirds in a safe manner? But
Yeah.
it's
But some and get the experience, it's like these young people, like I said, going through the pipeline now, and their certificate isn't even wet on the ink on their certificate, and they're flying the right seat of a jet. Next thing you know, okay, I have 1,500 hours, and now they're an airline pilot. I had 3,800 hours and two jet type rates, but mine was the gender thing. But
yeah, right.
they're just, you need to build experience, and nothing takes the place of experience.
No,
It's true.
absolutely.
Well, and I think one of the things is I think of the narration that I was doing and you when you're in the crowd, you hear them saying, and this T6, these guys only had, 200 hours in it, and then they went off to war and they flew it, and they think, well, if they can do it, I can do it. But flying is very different now than it was back then.
That's a good point you just made, Teresa. That's a very good point because that is what was happening, even with the wasps, who I just
Yeah.
adore and knew many of them. I flew some of them. I was down in Sweetwater for their reunion. I was wearing the wasp wings that I flew at Sun and Fun for Dawn Seymour. And then when I came back, she goes, "Would you just fly my wings when you go fly your show?" So I go to give them back to her, and she goes, "You keep those."
Ah,
Yeah, so I
oh, that,
the story at Sweetwater, I almost started crying because it was so emotional. And she goes, "Oh no, I wanted to know my wings flew with you, but I want you to keep them." And so I still have them.
oh
But
wow, that's
but those
amazing.
women were asked to do tasks that were unbelievable. But somehow Dorothy Cochran, she kept them safe and hammered on them, and they were experienced but had good training, really good training. And if you don't cut it, you're out.
And it comes back to the good training thing. Yeah, you may only have 200 hours, but how was your training? How was
Right.
your, do you have what you need to know to do what you want to do?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that you had was you had good training all the way across the board and you didn't I don't think based on what I know about you is you were not doing things you weren't supposed to be doing in an airplane to make a name for yourself. You were
Oh
just
yeah, no way. I kept it safe and
Mhm.
Um, like I remember people saying sometimes I'll never forget who was it used to tell me, "How come your hammerheads aren't quite right at 90?" Well, I remember in the pits, I thought, "Oh, that's not quite 90," and I'm down over at Goodyear Airport in Arizona practicing for a contest, and then I got myself into an inverted flat spin. And I remember thinking, I it took me about 4,000 feet to get out of it, and I lost the cushion meanwhile because I really was going to try to bail out if I could because I thought I'm not recognizing what's happening here. And all I kept thinking was I was still on probation with the airline. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get fired today because I'm not going to show up for my trip. That was
Wow.
what went through my mind. But I got out of that. And then I went right after that. I went to Walt Tubb. I was a big air show pilot back then. And I went through his inverted flats. I went through his spin training class right after that because
Right.
I was just going to learn. That almost cut my life short. And I was 28.
Right. Well, aerobatics is no easy feat. You definitely have to take a lot. It's a lot of practice, a lot of training,
A
and
lot of practice.
it's
Oh my
not
God.
just,
Day and night, every day before in the spring. I mean, just
yeah.
practice, practice.
And people don't see that side of the airshow industry. I'm constantly with my husband, always at the practice field.
Yep. Yep.
Well, and I saw a quote this morning, strangely enough, and it just came back to my head. And I'm not going to get it right, but I'm going to get the gist of it is smart people are always learning more from somewhere else, from someone else. Dumb people already know the answer.
Very good.
I have to look up the actual full one, but your flat spin is a perfect example of that. You could have just been like, well, I'm never going to do that again. But instead, you said, I've got to learn how to handle this the next time.
Right.
And that's smart flying.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
So
Well,
let's see. You want to talk about real quick the questions, or are we running out of time?
well, I'm running out of time, but yeah, let's Julie, we had a couple people that had, we asked some fans some questions. So, on behalf of your fans, I will start with one of your fans is a rising country rock artist. Actually got some really good songs. I will send you his link. His name is Corey Marks, and his question was, do you have memories of North Bay, Ontario? North Bay, Ontario. I guess that's his hometown. Um,
Okay. I flew shows
yeah.
up there. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess do you have any memories of that? I don't know what that means, but I guess he saw you there. He's a big air show fan, and oh my god, his music is amazing. So I will send you once you see his.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I have memories of North Bay and flying up there in Timmins and some of these really remote air show places up in Ontario, way up north, Sudbury, Timmins, North Bay, and of course base Borden, and then Trenton Air Force Base. Canadian Air Force, Canadian. Let's see, the Royal Canadian Air Force. Terrible name.
RC.
yeah, RCAF.
Yeah.
Cool.
Of course, I flew so many shows up in Canada. Just
Yeah, he's Canadian.
He is
So-
Canadian.
Yep.
Hold on one second. I was looking up the question. The other question was from the gentleman that I told you about, Mike Beckerman, who's the young 34 mentor. And he just wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about how you developed your aerobatic sequence in the T-34. And I suspect he's asking that because he's in the process of doing it himself.
Oh, good deal. Well, I knew that the airplane in itself with just smoke is not exciting. And so I'm one of the very first people that first started flying to music. And the first song I flew to was What a Wonderful World.
Louis Armstrong?
Armstrong, right.
Oh.
And it was a kind of a short song, but I just kept, I remember Bob Hoover saying, when you start repeating the maneuvers and you've been up in the air too long. And so my show has never been a real long show because the airplane is kind of limited, but the flying it to music. And then I decided that from there I went to it starts with the music. And they did a movie about the runner. Oh gosh, what was the name of that
Dun,
song?
dun, 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 dun.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Chariots of Fire.
Yeah, it was Chariots of Fire. So I flew to that song for about 2 years. And then back in 1983, I heard the song Lee Greenwood's God Bless USA. It was around 4th of July. And so I called the radio station. I was still living in Livermore. And I got a hold of Mr. Greenwood, and then we became friends. And we still email each other to this day.
That is so cool.
Because I still remember you calling and asking if you could use the rights to my song. He goes, I had barely written the song. And his first song was God Bless You, Canada. Same. So I did
Oh,
up in Canada from the lakes of something, from sea to shining sea. Anyway, it's all about
yeah.
Canadian provinces. And so that's nowhere. So he changed the wording to God Bless USA. And I flew to that song for 36 years. And there was one show I did in 4th of July at the VP Fair, the Fair St. Louis, where we flew in front of the arch.
Yeah, we've done that show.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great show. And Lee Greenwood was doing a concert that weekend. So we got a hold of each other, and he goes, man, I'd sure love to fly and sing the song live for you. I said, well, let me talk to the powers that be. And they said, absolutely no way. How can we put him on the grass and have him not be mobbed because he's singing? So you know what they did? They put him up on the top of the arch and he sang live to me from the arch. And I cried through the whole song. And luckily I didn't hit the Poplar Bridge or the Eads Bridge. But anyway, that was the most memorable show. People say, what's your favorite show? That's my most memorable show ever. Was
Crazy.
That's really cool.
Well, I was going to ask, what's your greatest memory? So in the air show,
Beat us to the punch.
he did. That was actually Patrick's question. I'm like, I have to ask a question that my husband wants.
him flying live to my, and then I saw him again in Schenectady, New York, and I was doing an air show there. And of course, he didn't come out to the air show, but I went to his concert and I wrote down my name. And they said, so they let me go around the back after the show was over. And he still says to me, thank you for making me so popular. And I'm going, yeah, right, Lee. So famous, I guess is the word he uses. So we still laugh about that. But he has said, you probably listen to my song more times than anybody else ever. True, every weekend.
That was your
I
song.
was out practicing, I had, back in those days, I had the little cassette tape deck that I had to push behind me. Then I'd tell my ground crew, wait 3 seconds. So the tape would go in and start, the real little cassette deck. And
Wow.
start the music, at down the announcer stand. But that was a lot of coordination because I was flying it to the music and I made the routine choreograph to the music. So at the height of something, I'm doing a hammerhead, then I'm coming down, doing a vertical roll during the height of the music. And, if you really watch it, it's choreographed to the song.
Yeah, I've seen you perform. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
To put together. Yeah.
Well, we have been on tape now for way longer than we promised you, I think. Well, it's rainy days are that way. But I want to just close talking a little bit, which will irritate all of your past relationships. We're going to talk a little bit about your accomplishments because we mentioned them early on, but I want to talk a little bit more because you have been honored at the highest levels. You are an Art Show Award winner. You've won the Bill Barber Award, which I think is showmanship, right?
Yeah, they're both
the ICAST Sword of Excellence, which is overall. You were inducted into the Air Show Hall of Fame earlier this year. Or no, that was not this year. This year was the National Aviation Hall of Fame. That was just a couple of months ago, right?
Right, September. Yeah.
In September. So, people who are watching this need to understand that not only are you fun and interesting to listen to, but your career has really brought focus onto what women can do in aviation. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I think you are an inspiration to me. And I don't even fly yet.
He is so talented. No, I'm honored to
okay.
have you be, and you've been such a great host.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
You're just awesome, Theresa. I love you.
Well, thank you. I love you too. I think Natalia, I have to say, Natalia is the one who said, you got to read some of this stuff about her. So she had been sending me videos all morning.
Well, yeah, Julie.
You peripherally, like I said, we've met several times.
Oh, I remember for sure. You always wear these great big skirts and you belt out these songs. Oh my God, you're my hero.
Well, you're mine because you can fly and I can't. But I have to say thank you, Natalia, for allowing me to be a part of this and to bring your story. Because like I said, I've known you, but I haven't known the story. I'm actually already ordered the book on Amazon while we were sitting here. I looked it up and I'm going to hit buy now in just a second. Because I think, and our listeners, I really want to say, read the book, watch the videos we post.
Absolutely. You have to know Julie's story.
Thank you so much for hosting. She's kept this real lively, and I like that.
Yeah, that's why I got her to.
I can talk.
And I love listening.
Well, thank you. Thank you for enduring this and the technology issues.
Fun. And it's been fun with the three of us. It's really, I've enjoyed this. It's really been a fun time. And I thank you so much.
I hope you come back and talk to us some more.
Absolutely.
Just calm now that I got this all down, right? Yeah.